Welcome back. You're now watching the political segment on The Weekend Show. We talk about fundamental human rights. When you talk about that, it isn't something we should be given as a favor. And a big part of fundamental human rights stresses on equality. We have a system where when young people are given positions and leadership stages to own, it's made to look like they're doing them a favor. When women are given platforms or when women choose to get into the field to do what they want to do, it sounds like they're being done a favor. And it's also like there's a light on you saying, if you mess this up, you mess it up for every other person. And then they have to struggle and work extra hard. And then in some cases, they're told you need to be married before you could even get into politics. You need to be XYZ. You need to dress conservatively. You need to do X, ABC. The National Assembly, for instance, there's this unspoken dress code for women, but not for men. And then you now have the National Assembly once again, where we went from almost 10% to 9, 7, and now 4 and 3% of female involvement in the legislative arm of government. So while we should be growing, it seems it's getting bad. And I've remembered in the last year, several female senators have had one or two grievances. One of them was Senator Ireti Kingibe, and there was this passive comment of, oh, we know how we deal with things, we'll handle it. There was also a comment where someone was told, we're not in a nightclub. But we've seen in the National Assembly representatives throwing chairs, stealing maces, and physically fighting. But now someone wants to speak and she gets thrown out. Happy International Women's Month. We'll be talking about women in politics and the battles they have to face on this segment. And joining us
we have Cynthia Mbamalu, who's the Director of Programs at Yaga Africa, and Awa Alabora, who is an entrepreneur and activist. Good morning, and thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Welcome back, Cynthia.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
And happy International Women's Month.
Thank you.
I must say it's quite embarrassing as a Nigerian to see what's the headline in the news in recent times when we have bigger issues in the country and globally. What's your take on what I've just spoken about, basically?
You know, when you were talking, I felt some sense of joy within, because this is what we need. We need a lot more men speaking who understand this issue, who are willing to speak truth to power and to speak with women. Because what we've had over a long period of time is women fighting for their right to just be, to just exist, to be seen, to be heard. And each time a woman fights for her rights, there's a percentage of men that would believe that her fight for her rights is an attack to their masculinity or to their male folk or to their manhood. And it's almost like each time we fight for the right of a woman, you get a defense from a man saying, but why women? Why women? But the truth is, what you've said is the reality. Nigeria as a country, we're performing poorly when it comes to women representation. If you look at the World Economic Forum's Gender Gap Report of 2024, Nigeria was ranked 136 out of the 146 countries surveyed when it comes to women political empowerment, which goes to the data you gave. Out of 109 senators, only 4 are women. Out of 360 House of Reps members, only 17 are women. And sadly, we lost one this year, if you remember. Honorable Nanuga, we lost her. And it's sad that this is the data that we have. And you can imagine that 2025, 30 years post the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, we are still struggling to achieve significant women representation in government. So that is what we have. Now, from the representation, what we've seen is consistently several or undue standards are used to assess women who even struggle and fight to get into the space. And when you talked about the issue in the National Assembly, I think as a people, this is a time for us to actually sit back and reflect on how we treat women and ask ourselves if that is justice. And I'm glad you made the references that we've had in different instances. We've had several individuals who are male, who have led us, who have performed poorly, but we've never used their poor performance as an assessment to judge the next man contesting. A simple thing, General Sani Abacha stole and looted this country, estimated about $2 to $5 billion US dollars in loot. We've never said we will not vote a man because one man looted us dry. We've had people who have not just looted this country, but has drained and impoverished our people. We've never said, oh, since 1960, we've had men leading and they have failed, so we don't need to vote for men anymore. We've never judged the bad performance of a man, use that as a judgment for the next man. We've always still gone with saying, oh, someone else could be better, let's judge them on the content of their character. But when it comes to conversation around women, in these past few weeks, I have not just been disheartened but heartbroken, because we have lawmakers from the Senate who have granted interviews and have spoken in the most derogatory terms about women. One of them said, with this attitude, we will not vote women again. It means women are not mentally capable. One of them said women should go through psychological assessments before they contest elections. One of them said, women cannot be sexually harassed, or senators cannot be sexually harassed or abused. You had one that said the Senate is for the elderly. As a younger Nigerian, I even felt insulted, because Senate is not a retirement home. It is a place for legislation, for oversight and representation. But in all of this, we've had derogatory terms used to assess women, and none of them speaking about the content of the agitation. And he talked about seats. There was an agitation. It was not responded to. It was not listened to. And then all of a sudden, we have a shoddy committee meeting, and then there is a supposed committee report and highlighting penalties. And before we knew it, if at all they claimed that it was because of the outburst as the allocation of seats, you have penalties like suspension for 6 months, penalties proposing that she should not be addressed or address herself as a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, both nationally and globally, penalties like depriving her of her allowances for 6 months. And if you do a sample of the cases of suspensions we've had in the National Assembly since the Fourth Republic, you would see that we've had about between 6 to 8 or so in the Senate. And in all of them, none of that was as simple as an agitation on a seat allocation. It was even something grievous, and they all went to court and fought it. And we have precedent in court, at least Omo Agege's case and Senator Ndume's case that said you can't suspend a senator for more than 14 days. Even their rule book identifies that. Why? Because senators represent citizens. The National Assembly is the hub of our democracy, which is why in the military time we had no legislative arm, because the militaries ruled like dictators. They ruled with executive orders. Now we have a democracy, supposedly. We have a National Assembly. And the idea of representation, that is equitable representation of citizens. So what we have done by sitting down and watching the Senate suspend Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan for 6 months is we have deprived the people of Kogi Central Senatorial District the right to equitable representation, which is even a violation of their fundamental right as a people in a democracy. That is what we have done. Secondly, we have basically allowed the Senate to not just demand that she does not address herself as a senator, but to undermine the power of the elections, which is the process of leadership transition in Nigeria. So what we have said, what the Senate has said basically is, we don't care about the electoral process. We are the ones who are in charge. And we are now saying, no, you can no longer be a senator. The only one that can say you can't be a senator is either a court overturns an election or your people recall you. And so I think we need to put this in proper perspective. So when you ask me, how do I feel? I say, in all of this, in the month of March, when we try to bring attention to the issues women face, our country, Nigeria, the Nigerian Senate, which ought to be a symbol of our democracy, has not only said to women, we do not like you, they have taken turns to insult women, derogate women, undermine our intelligence and capacity, and taking us backward. And if I bring my last shot, the World Economic Forum, the Gender Gap Report, said it will take the world about 134 years to achieve gender parity. That is, if you're thinking about it, not in our lifetime that would achieve gender parity. But in that report, it says Sub-Saharan Africa is achieving some progress, about 60-something% including the parity. But the countries affecting the growth in Sub-Saharan Africa and achieving gender parity, one of it was Nigeria. There were 3. One was Nigeria. Why? Because being one of the most populous nation in Sub-Saharan Africa, as long as we're not achieving parity, even though countries like Namibia was among the first 10, countries like South Africa and others were achieving better parity, the sub-Saharan Africa ranking would keep reducing because countries with larger population were not achieving parity. So basically, we're not just a failure to our country, we're a failure to our continent. And when we say we're a giant of Africa, we are not yet ready. And I think the Nigerian Senate, in all of its shenanigans, the Nigerian Senate needs to understand that there's a reason there's a constitution. There's a reason people fought for our democracy. And when there are issues that are raised, especially around fundamental rights, the Senate should address those issues. And when there is a review of processes, we always say you tamper justice with mercy. If your rule book says no more than 14 days, it shouldn't exceed. If the court has given judgment and we have a precedent and you give a decision in breach of that precedent, what you're basically saying is you don't respect court orders and you don't respect the rule of law, meaning that you don't believe the courts have the power to give precedents that should stand. And I think for me, that is not just an embarrassment to our democracy and to Nigerians, it's a shame that we have a Nigerian Senate that creates excuses for bad behavior.
You know, something that troubled me greatly is there was a motion which was being raised to be passed. And the Senate President had read the first one. And the second one, he asked those in support say aye. The ayes were fewer than the nays. He asked 3 times. And the 3 times, the nays were louder. And he said the ayes have it. And the reason why I say this is because of what you said about the courts. If Senator Natasha was suspended for not going in line with the rule book of the Senate, the court had given an injunction, but the Senate disobeyed it. The federal government, the executive arm, has also disobeyed several court judgments. But you want people to respect you. You want people to stop talking about it. I heard a senator say, and media houses who we gave licenses to are here talking XYZ and summoning us. You are there to serve the people. And we must state this. Respect should be earned. And you are a servant of the people, to the people, and for the people. However, the reason why we're even having a little bit of higher numbers is that President Tinubu had said he will give 35% to women and young people. And interestingly, he has tried his best that we have a higher number now relatively. Impact is something we'll discuss on another day. But we can't be taking 1 step forward and 2 steps backwards.
It's also unfortunate, and Cynthia has said so much. It's also even more unfortunate that some of those derogatory statements, which she mentioned by the leaders in power and those that have been in power, were from women as well.
Yeah.
If you watch the
Men and
interviews,
women.
unfortunately. But I would like to also hear your thoughts on this particular topic. And how do you feel about women being held at a higher standard when it comes to everything really in Nigeria, not just leadership?
Yeah, so for me in politics, I would say it's a strategy. So when you look at the leaders right now, when they were in their 30s, when they were in their 40s, they were elected into positions of power. But what I feel is that they've mastered the art of not letting new people go into that particular place and not giving opportunity to right women or women who want to stand up to make changes. Because what you will see is that every time a woman or anybody that is trying to challenge the authority, which is why we elect them to serve us, there is always an attempt or there's always like a gang up to sort of like subdue what they're trying to do. So when I look at it from a strategy angle, these people, or will I say this gathering of old men, because how they treat the House of Assembly looks like a fraternity to me. It looks like a cult where you cannot stand up to anything, you cannot say anything, or you'll be silenced. You know, when you look at, is it Undume? No, not Undume. You will see that when he came out and he said something about Ningi, yes, budget padding. Yes, he might have discussed with a few people and said, look, we're going to challenge budget padding. And immediately he challenged budget padding. You could see that no one else could stand up for him to say, I support you, you know. And when he went on that suspension, they sort of suppressed him and subdued him to the extent that when he came back into the National Assembly, he started playing ball and he started being quiet. So that's why I'm happy with what's happening with Senator Natasha, not because it's personally good for her, but it's going to bring us to a conclusion or to an opening to say, you know what, I'm a senator, I can go and speak against some of these policies, I can speak against some of this bill, and it doesn't mean, because in their rule book, I think section 66, I think 4 says you can't suspend for more than a day for a seat outburst or a seat problem. But you could see how they've given us 6 months. So what this situation is going to lead us to is that you cannot actually suspend a senator for more than 1 day when the person has an outburst or when the person is having an issue on a seat. And then it will give our senators a bit of comfort, probably the ones that want to work for the people, to say, look, I won't get more than 14 days, so I can speak against this. I won't get more than 1 day, so I can talk against this. Because what's happening is just suppression, and that suppression is just so that the ruling class can continue to enjoy what they enjoy. And when you said, they said nay, they said aye, you can tell that almost all the bills that the administration wants is being passed because of this sort of ayes and nays. The aye is what the Senate president decides is aye, and the nay is what the Senate president decides is nay. So all these things we need to watch clearly and make sure that young people, strong people, I think next to 2027, we need to get more women there, more young people there that can stand up and that can form a team that will actually want to fight for Nigerians, which is why they were elected there, to make policies and legislatures that would affect us.
Another problem which we face, and one of the top 3 problems in Nigeria, is insecurity.
Yes.
I traveled recently and I was walking down the street and I saw 4 young black people. And for me, I was a bit careful for myself. And this is a stereotype, because I was like, I don't know these guys from anywhere. They looked shady, and this was me being judgmental. But I wasn't worried about myself. The first thought that crossed my mind was, if a young black girl is passing here, how safe does she feel to even walk down this road? She may have to cross the road for her safety. Now, as a young woman, as a woman from northern Nigeria, you're seeing what's going on. But at the highest level, one of the punitive measures which have been mentioned is that the security from Senator Natasha should be withdrawn. Remember, this is someone who, when she was running an election, thugs were sent to attack her.
Yeah.
They literally had to break the expressway leading to her constituency.
Yeah, to stop them from going to vote, yes.
How do you think this affects the Nigerian woman in general, if we're seeing this happen at that level?
So when it comes to even talks of safety, I've actually been almost raped, almost cut off my head in Jos in 2009. So I understand, the safety measures. But that's why I tell people that before you join politics, it's very important that you have something doing or a name for yourself, or sort of like, I would prefer that maybe you have sort of finance, like a level of finance, so that you don't go there and, you become a career politician who is there to make bread or make this thing. So in Senator Natasha's case, I feel like it's just this suppression strategy. They want to undermine. That's why they said 6 months, no security, no money for your this, no that, no this. They have spoken to her, because the way they address her sometimes, I feel like, is this a senator that got votes from her people to be there? Some of them talk to her like, you see, when there was the outburst, how they said, take her out of here and suspend her. That's the first thing that came out of here. Take her out of here. It's almost like he's talking to one of his boys and all that. So all that security taken away from her, which I know that, before she became a senator, I'm sure she had maybe not high-level security, but she would be able to have some things because she's married to, Oduaga, and that's a big chieftaincy title in the Niger Delta or something like that. So, yeah, I feel like they're just trying to make sure that she's frustrated enough to play ball. They frustrate you so that you will be so down, depressed, and you will now come. And that's why they took everything from her. Because even her workers that were there, how can you not pay them salary because she had an outburst? So all these things is to pressure her. By the time you are the one paying for your own security or your own transportation, you are the one paying your workers for 6 months, you are the one, you cannot address yourself anywhere as senator. All these things, when it starts happening to you, you now say, is it even worth it? Should I not just go there? My people are already pressuring me to say sorry. Let me just go and just act like they want me to act so that I can at least serve my people. It's a strategy, and I feel like she should hold strong. She should stay tight and, apply wisdom, but in a way that she's going to make, because she's fighting for all of us. And when they say we are all Natashas, we are really all Natashas, because at the end of this, right, she will be able to give us the power and the authority to say, look, we can stand up to the oppressors and actually win them in a battle. I don't know which of the battles, because they keep they keep suppressing her, they keep doing women, bring in different women, different organizations to support them. I saw the Senate President and Senator Bamidele on International Women's Day, something they've never done before. They brought out flyers, blown up their faces, had women in the legislature carrying the flyers and say, we are in support of these people, we're in the support. So these are the things that we're seeing from these men, and we're saying, you know what, Senator Natasha might actually break that part and let more women understand that they have authority and they have strength to this thing. So security strategy. So she should just she should just calm down.
I remember watching just last week, and I don't know how recent this is, the video by Tony Nwoye, a video with Tony Nwoye in the Senate, where he was complaining in the Senate, saying that when they have committees and the likes, the Senate president picks leaders and people for them, and they have no say. And he kept on saying, we are not your slaves, we are not your children, like we're elected here. There are no sanctions. There are no
sanctions.
problems. We had to that senator telling him, okay, calm down, it's okay. And I believe the National Assembly is not a castle where there's a monarch and a king and everything. It's a place for arguments and debates. That's literally what it is for. And so now are we now saying that there should be no debate and there should be no dissenting voices? Because you said something right. So most of the laws that are passed are brought from the presidency through the people who we know, and they come in. And there are some laws, like the tax law, we're told from the beginning that there's nothing we can do
about it.
And it is being passed. The House of Reps has already, and next in the Senate, did
It's a lot.
Yes,
I've just
it
been
is.
taking everything in, and with all the news from the past weeks, it's been a lot. But I would like to know, where do we go from here, Cynthia, as women, as people? Like the example you gave of, women not being free enough. Sometimes I just want to clear my head and go for a walk at night, and I can't do that because the first thing that comes to my head is my security. But a man doesn't have to think about that, really. He doesn't. It's so unfortunate where we've come, in 2025, we're having conversations like this. In the UK, Kemi, who is, the leader of the opposition, she's able to speak directly to the Prime Minister, and, and he's able to speak back to her, and they're able to have banter. Everybody laughs and they move on. They pass their bills and do what they have to do. But in Nigeria, as you said, it has become a monarchy, unfortunately. So where do we go from here, Cynthia?
I think first is we need to begin to invest in creating awareness and consciousness amongst the people. We, as a people, we need to understand that this democracy is what gives us the right to ask questions, make demands, and when it's time for elections, we come out in our numbers and vote out people who think that being in government is their birthright. And why do I say that? We cannot have dictators and military rulers in a democracy. The Senate president, he is elected in a democracy. He's not a dictator. He's not a king that we should bow to. And same also the senators. When I was hearing Senator Bamidele speak the other day, I felt a bit disgusted. I followed him in the Senate, and I felt this is one of those that are a bit rational. But I think when it comes to certain issues, they want to, this boys' club, what do you call it? Boys' club, protect themselves, and it's easier to beat down a woman. When it's a man, you don't. And I give example with the 7th Assembly, right, when Seraki was the Senate president. And the outburst of Senator Akpabio himself. In fact, he did not stand in one place. Senator Natasha stood in one place when she was and she was reading the other 10 of their rule book. 13 seconds into her speech, into her reading it, was when they asked the sergeant of arms to take her out. If you watch Senator Akpabio's case, in fact, he was moving up and down, very cantankerous in his expression of his displeasure. And it was no one was telling him, oh, you shouldn't have done that. And people will not go on the media to undermine him. So when you talk about where we need to go from here, as a people, I think we need to begin to wake up. We have to ask ourselves, who are we voting into the Senate and into the House of Representatives? If we cannot secure that arm of government, we've lost our democracy. If you look at the military coups that has happened within West African Sub-Region and Central Africa, one of the things that happened was people lost confidence in the democracy in their parliament. So parliamentarians could not even speak. They no longer represented the people. And so when the militaries military coups happen, you had the people celebrating in those countries, not because they don't like democracy, but to them, democracy has failed. And so what we have now is a legislative arm of government that rather than securing our democracy and speaking for us, they are rather becoming the threat to our democracy. So we need to wake up. Secondly, we can no longer have a National Assembly that do not understand that sovereignty belongs to the people of Nigeria, through which governmental powers are exercised. So the powers they exercise is not their power. It is our power that they exercise. And so we can no longer have a National Assembly that cannot even speak up to checkmate the powers of the executive. You talked about how bills are passed. When it comes to, I talk about the National Anthem Bill, for one. The fact that that National Anthem Bill was passed without a public and national conversation shows us that we have a 10th Assembly that does not care about Nigerians. You don't change your national anthem without a conversation with the people. You don't wake up and pass a bill within one of the fastest bills passed. But what do we learn from that? Is that we have to be a lot more vigilant, because without vigilance, we lose our power. Now we're not sure. You talked about the tax bill. These are just examples. There are several other bills that would be coming that probably are already existing. We need to start asking ourselves, what is going into those bills? Is an ongoing proposal for electoral amendments, ongoing proposal for constitutional amendment. We need to ask ourselves, what is there? Before we have laws that are passed to further undermine our right as a people and to silence us. Because at this point, we can't even trust the National Assembly as an independent arm of government to checkmate the powers of the executive or to represent us as the people. The third part is we need to get more women and young people into office, like she said. Because the truth is, if you keep having a boys' club, if you keep having a cult, because to me now it's becoming a cult, when people cannot speak freely because they belong to it's becoming a cult. And that for me is problematic. I was following Congress, U.S. Congress the other day when President Trump was giving his State of the Union. And I saw some lawmakers working out that we can't stand this guy. He's telling us lies. And I'm like, wow, what sort of, that's boldness. See, that's something, even if they have their own struggles and their own challenges, at least legislators have a sense of independence that you, Mr. President, you are Mr. President, I am a legislator. I don't answer to you. I'm here to checkmate your power. If I don't agree with you, I tell you that. And I don't care what the Speaker or the President of the Senate is saying. I represent my constituents. Now, that is the kind of mindset we need, but that mindset would come from newer crops of legislators.
Absolutely.
Young women and women, young people, young men. No, we need to get younger people into National Assembly. The next election, please, I'm begging Nigerians, we have to come out in our numbers and vote. We have to change the game. If not, we will lose our country.
We have our 1 minute, your final
Yes.
word.
So I totally agree with you. You need more young people, more vibrant people, people that can stand up, speak up. We need people that are sort of established because I think money is being used as a tool. So you have people that can say, you know what, or maybe you need less greedy people who can actually go into office and say, what I want to do is a legacy, or what I want is a name, what I want is something that people can look back and say, I did it. So once you have more people in those positions of power, we'll begin to have people like Natasha Akpoti Oduagan who can challenge, authorities. So definitely, in 2027, we need to start strategizing. Who should we vote for? It's not about party. It's about credential. It's about personality. It's about track record of what the person has done. And let's see. It's a gamble sometimes. You might be out of 20, you might get 7 right or 8 right, and that's a good number. But let's keep gambling until we're able to get more people there that can fight for our rights and can, do things the right way.
I think that's a great place
Yes,
to leave it.
yes.
Cynthia, Howard,
Yeah.
That's what we can take on the political segment. We do have Entrepreneur Spotlight next, and what we've also said on this show is we want to teach people financial literacy. And for this month and going forward, we want to empower women, we want to give them a platform like you watch Get Fit with Ron. You will have financial literacy conversations. We don't want to depend on government. We just want to eat, live, survive safely, and the least is the least we can do. So we'll take a quick break. When we return, more on The Weekend Show.